as you see today, we're going to be delving into Malcolm and Marie. This is for people who've seen it. Not for those of you who started it, got annoyed, and then didn't finish it, okay? So I wasn't going to do like analysis or reflection on this, but somebody asked me like, please tell me you're going to break down Malcolm and Marie. So since it's on brand with love and relationships that I'm focusing on in the month of February, I decided to go ahead and give you all a little video on it. Some of the top, I was going to do like a top 5 things to take away, but I think I have more than 5 things written out. So we're just gonna kind of go with the flow with what I feel like the messages of the movie that are good takeaways for people to know about. So the one thing that I did really like is the fact that it felt very millennial. Y'all know I'm all things millennial. It felt very millennial. When it started, I thought maybe it would be set in like a years back type of time frame because he was playing like that old ass music. But once they got to talking, I said, oh, this is very like 2021. I know a lot of people made comments about the fact that it triggered them, like it reminded them of their most toxic relationship. And I feel like I don't want to label it toxic because at one point during the movie, Marie said that had been one of the worst fights that they had ever been in. She didn't say that they fought like that all the time. So I think that it is normal for couples to have moments where the fighting just kind of gets out of pocket. Should those moments be often? No, they should be very few, far between, if any. But I'm not going to say like, oh, their whole relationship was toxic. Because based on what they told us, that little key piece was like, all right, this sounds like this isn't something that they do all the time. So I have other little things that I've noticed that I liked or disliked that I'll kind of point out throughout my next few points. But it was a lot. And in order for me to do this, I had to watch it 2 times. I understand. I feel like it is one of them movies where you really only need to watch it 1 time. Because anything after 1 time, it kind of like loses its oomph. And it's already kind of exhausting. Entertaining, but exhausting, you know, because you just didn't know. It was the element of surprise in the first one of not knowing how everything was going to end. But watching it the second time, it was just like, okay, so y'all lucky I like y'all. Because I went through and I watched it again to make sure that I would have things to discuss and points to really talk about. So let's go get on into this. I forgot to charge my second phone, so I'll be looking at my computer just as my reference. The first thing. Respectful transparency is necessary. So I know that some people felt like the way in which they argued was not okay. And I agree. They didn't fight fair at all. It wasn't full of healthy communication. But I will say what was refreshing is the amount of transparency and honesty that they were able to share with one another and recover from that. You should be able to open your wounds, your scars, all of that to your partner and be able to make something of it that doesn't necessarily feel like guilt or regret. So I think that was a really good, not necessarily good example, but I think that it's important to be transparent, but to be respectful. I think the respectful piece is what was missing, but the amount of transparency that each of them displayed towards each other, I think is something that is valuable in any relationship. So the second point I have is finding balance between respecting your partner's communicative boundaries and allowing tension to exist longer than needed. So what I mean by that is Marie was very upfront about the fact that she didn't really want to talk because she felt like the conversation wouldn't go anywhere. And so sometimes our partners, they may be in spaces where they don't feel like talking, or they want to postpone the conversation so that way they can gather their thoughts and better be able to express themselves, which is a good thing to do sometimes. Like when you force people to speak out of anger, like if a person is angry and you're like, talk to me, and they're like, I really don't want to talk right now, you are opening the door for them to communicate in poor ways. Period, point blank. Because sometimes it is difficult for people to communicate in a healthy way out of anger. That's the goal. You want to be able to do that. But some people aren't there yet. So it is very likely that if you push a person, then the conversation may not be as productive as it would have been had you let them sit for a second, However, I don't think it's always helpful when you do that and you can clearly tell, like on the other person's end, you can clearly tell that it's something wrong with your partner. You can clearly tell that they are upset. If you don't really have an idea of why they are upset, then that can throw you off, right? Like now you walking around and you feel this tension, but you have no clue what you did and you just want them to tell you. So your anxiety starts to rise. So that's a difficult place to be in. But again, there's a balance that has to occur when it's like, okay, my partner is not in the space to communicate at their best, so let me leave them alone. We'll revisit the conversation. Or like, you're acting so harshly towards me, I feel like you need to get off your chest what you need to get off, so that way we can talk about it and we can get through it and we can move on. So that's a slippery slope, but you have to find that balance of, again, allowing your partner the space to kind of sit with their feelings, formulate their thoughts, and come back to you, and not having an attitude the whole time where it's ruining the mood, especially on a night like, say, I think the thing to remember is this was a very important night for him. So it'd be different if it was any other day. The fact that this was so important to him, I think that sometimes for our partner's benefit, when we are upset about something at a time that is very important for them, sometimes we have to put those feelings in a box and we got to sit them to the side for the betterment of the relationship, and of not, stealing, or not necessarily stealing, that's not the right word, but of overtaking what should be an important night to them. I think about memories, right? So I sometimes think it's unfair to, even though you may be upset, I understand it, I'm not invalidating that. I think that sometimes it is unfair to monopolize a very important moment in somebody's life, when for the betterment of them, you could have put it to the side. And to give you a brief example, I had you think back about the important moments in your life, right? So I think about my prom. My boyfriend at the time got upset with me about something at the prom, something that I really didn't have no control of. I think he thought I was Duchess and I had a Dutch that I had to dance with. And he said something about his hand being too close on my butt. And he made a fight out of it. And I ended up crying at my prom. And that's a memory I will always have. So that's what I'm saying, is sometimes for our partners, we got to put shit on hold. Because, and I'm not talking about no big stuff, but on a night that they're going to remember forever, sometimes we got to put our feelings in a box and we got to sit it to the side. And then the next morning you can wake up with an attitude and you can lay it on them. Okay? So, the next point is, all right, an apology does not absolve you of the hurt caused. People are allowed to forgive you on their own time. So at a certain point, Malcolm, he's apologizing. I'm sorry. What you want me to say? I'm sorry. What you want me to do? I don't know what else you want from me. It's not necessarily guaranteed that because you apologize, a person is just supposed to be like, okay, we all good. No, that's not what that means. So understand that when you extend an apology to somebody, it is still up to them to come around, to accept the apology, to be in a better headspace. The words don't necessarily absolve the wrongdoing, So in those moments, you could tell she was hurt about not being thanked. And the fact that he's like, well, I don't know what else you want me to do, that doesn't help. So understand that. It's you can apologize and your partner can still be upset. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to get over it, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to switch moods at the drop of a hat either. Okay. The next one, huge one. Small issues, small arguments that come up within a relationship can be reflective of bigger issues that have gone unchecked. And we saw that, right? So it started with, and I'm gonna move my computer so I can read and really look at y'all. So it started with, right? It started with him not thanking her. And that then exposed other underlying unmet needs and insecurities that existed within that relationship. New problems just kept showing up, which is, I understand, like, for him, he trying to move on from the night, and every time he leave the room, something else come up. And that was, on both of their ends. But it was like they were getting a good space, but there were so many layered issues that had not been addressed, where now we in this night where everything is coming up. And that's why it's so important to really sit down and have in-depth conversations with your partner on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, is like check-ins. Because without that, people are just going through the motions and things get lost and feelings don't get addressed and they get put to the side and, under the rug, and they're still in the house, okay? And they're going to continue to show up until they get dealt with. So, again, it started with him not thanking her, right? And then that led to her, pretty much coming to the realization, I don't feel appreciated. I feel taken advantage of. Then it moved on to, you not jealous. You don't care. You wouldn't care if you saw me on another man's arm. And then, I'm indifferent. And then it moved on to him being needy. And then it moved on to her feeling like she doesn't have a career and a life of her own. So it just escalated into a bunch of different issues, which, again, if you haven't seen my video on fair fighting, I talk a lot about this in that video, where we have to stick to one issue at a time. Because what happens is, if there are a bunch of other issues that you haven't been dealing with, then it's just going to be, you ever seen the trick that a magician do, and he pull it out and it's never ending? They just all intertwine. They all end up wrapped up in one another. So sit and have those check-ins. Like, what are you happy with in this relationship? What are you not happy? What do you feel like you're lacking? What do you feel like I can help you improve on? Like, where do you need support? Like, these are conversations that need to be revisited, because we get comfortable, we get complacent, and then one night something like this happens where your partner forgets to thank you, and then everything that you really feel about the relationship just kind of comes to light. And now you sitting with all of it, because that's what it was. All of these things, it just hit her in one night. Not that she hadn't been thinking about it, but the compilation of everything, it just all showed up. All right. Okay, the next one. Don't be going around asking questions that you don't want the answers to. So this whole time, right, Marie thinks that his movie was based on her. And then at a certain point, she asks him, well, who else is it? Who else is the book based on? He was like, people. And she wasn't trying to buy that. And later on, she was in that tub, because she kind of kept poking, this is about me, that he didn't have any other references. And she asked, who else is it about? Now he's telling you about all the other girls. There's the information that you really did need to hear. And she brought up a good point. She told him later on in the movie, like, you could have won the argument with 20% of what you said. And I do agree with that. I feel like it was partially his fault at how far things went, because there was a certain insensitivity. But I think, like, everything, like he said, had kind of been thrown out the window, and it didn't seem like there were any rules to arguing, which there have to be rules to fair fighting. But again, she opened that door when she wanted to know who else the character was based on, and he kind of let her have it. So a part of asking questions is bracing yourself and getting prepared for the worst case scenario of what that person could say to you. And if you're not prepared to deal with it, then you probably don't want to ask. All right. Okay, next one. Really big message of the movie. Do not let your relationship consume you. If you let your dreams fall to the wayside, you only end up with yourself to blame. Like, we ended up seeing that, it's like many women do. They pour. They support their man to no avail. And then they look up and realize that they haven't done much for themselves. So you can't blame your partner for that. If you need to set certain boundaries that allow for you to have a life and to have work outside of what your partner needs from you as far as support goes, then you have to set those boundaries, because we see what happens. You don't have shit and then y'all break up, and then what are you left with? Then you upset you spent the last 5 years, oh, I've been helping him and doing all this other stuff, but where were you? He gonna be okay. So as women, we have to have our own shit. We have to have our own lives. We cannot let a man in his world be everything. And he, I think one of the best lines he said was like, I need you to have your own stuff because, or no, he said like a fear of mine of you not having your own shit means you're going to be all in mine. So like, huge lesson. Don't allow yourself to be so supportive where you lose your own drive and goal planning to get to where you want to go. And huge one, last one. Don't weaponize people's trauma and past. That is not fair fighting. It is never okay. And what all that ends up happening is that person, the person you supposedly love and care about, ends up feeling like they can't tell you shit. Malcolm went below the belt when he brought up how she had overdosed, when he brought up how she tried to cut herself. That was below the belt. You do not weaponize people's past and their traumas against them. Because then they start to second guess like she did, like, what's the real reason you wanted to be with me? What's the real reason that you wanted to help me? Did you have something to gain out of it? Which she kind of connected the dots that he could have. Who's to say that was his real motivation? But it starts to brew unhealthy thoughts in people's minds about your intentions. And so, again, you want a trusting relationship. You have to give people the room to be able to share and know that you're not going to use their past against them. That is never okay. Never okay. All right. So, last few little notes as I wrap this up. See, I'm getting y'all in and out today. Just some things that I noticed that I like. So, I was supposed to look at this before I filmed this video and I forgot. The guy who played Malcolm, who somebody had to tell me on Twitter that is Denzel Washington's son. Hey. They talking about he looked like his mama, but he sounded like his daddy. When I watched it the second time, knowing that information, I definitely felt like, oh, Denzel, baby, in there. So that was nice to see. What I think is crazy is I feel like a lot of relationships or people who've dated end up in this scenario where, like, in the beginning of that movie, as a woman, I could clearly tell that Marie was annoyed. Even when she was like bantering with him for the first 15 to 20 minutes of that movie, I knew something was wrong. I knew she had a tool. And he's so up on his high horse, he wasn't paying no attention. It took him a while to realize that she was agitated. Like, she got a hold on her face. He kissing all on her, but she ain't for none of that. And well, yeah. So she wasn't for nothing, and he ain't noticed. So there's that. And men just think like, come on now, how you not gonna notice she got an attitude? She said it was fine, and that's another thing that I've talked about, ladies. Y'all need to stop. I don't even know if I talked about this on my channel. I think I said this in a session to somebody. You cannot be lying about how you actually feel. Now I do feel her on I changed my mind. I think she was trying to get through the night, trying not to fuck up his night. And once they got home, she was like, all right, the gloves is off because I'm pissed. But I just don't, I forgot where I was going. Y'all know that be happening. But yeah, he didn't even notice that she had attitude. Anyway, I feel like the below the belt comments were enforced by the language. The language is what was very problematic for me watching, like if that was a real argument playing out in real time. It was the language that felt condescending, that felt invalidating. that didn't feel good. And just as a few examples, it was a point in time where, he called her psychotic, delusional, unstable, intolerable. And in certain moments, you could tell he was joking, but like those are very strong words. And considering that she is somebody who had a substance abuse problem and clearly had some mental health issues because she tried to slit her wrist, why would you use those words? That wasn't okay. Again, this is acting, but in real life that wouldn't be okay. So that's what I felt was like that took things to another level. Like fuck you. I don't argue like that. I don't think it's conducive for couples to argue like that. I know it happens, but it's just unnecessary. Like if we get into fuck you and all of that, we don't need to be talking. We need to be in two separate rooms. We need to calm down and we need to come back together when we are able to talk to each other with some respect. Because that's what has to exist, the respect. People was trying to shade my homegirl Zendaya's mac and cheese. And I feel like I need to address this because there was a detail that people missed, which was that the production company moved them into that house for however long, but that wasn't their crib. So people was like, oh, he was acting like that because she made that weak ass mac and cheese. She was working with what she had. At least she added some butter. That's all they had in the cabinet. Slow up on her. I thought the moments in between the fighting were very sweet, but I also think that they sent a very they enforced the message of like how a lot of couples today work, where the highs are really high, like this roller coaster. The highs are great, which is what keeps people in sometimes toxic or dysfunctional relationships. It's like the highs are amazing. You feel like you on cloud 9. That's your person. Y'all vibing, y'all energy, y'all laughing. It's amazing. But them lows, when that roller coaster go down, baby, them motherfuckers almost go through the floor because of how bad them arguments get. But I will say, not to say that they had a good argument, but a good fight, a healthy fight, it can help you and your partner reach a different level of bond. Like, if you've ever came back from what started off to be a fight and then y'all were able to kind of talk through it and get a better understanding, that feeling, like that mutual understanding, is so empowering. It feels like you and your person can take on anything, but it can be really good for your relationship. So that's why I tell people don't always avoid confrontation, because we can't have any resolution without a little confrontation, without a little conflict. Right? Conflict resolution. We can't have no resolution if we don't address, these problems. Well, if we don't get into the nitty gritty. When she pulled out her acting skills on him, snapped. Okay, he thought sis was mediocre, and she had the skills. But again, that's what happens when you don't believe in yourself, when you have insecurities, because that role should have been hers. But her own shit held her back from really like letting it be known. Because my thing is, I'm not going to see my man has a position to put me in, the power to put me in a certain position, and I not advocate for myself. I don't care if that is my man. Like, so this is my role, right? So this, this is going to be for me, right? Like, it should have been enforced versus her just kind of like, we started this together, but you didn't make sure that you stayed in the picture the way you wanted to be in it. Okay? So I think people were pissed that they never actually had sex, because we was waiting for that, right? We was waiting on them to like finally just make up. But I think that also was an important piece. Sex cannot be a Band-Aid. And people use makeup sex like a Band-Aid for the problems in their relationships. We fight, we have great makeup sex, and then nothing is ever solved. So I think it was good that they let the movie end with her getting her thank you, saying you're welcome, and that being that. Because when sex enters the picture, it kind of wipes everything of what was of importance kind of off the table sometimes. It'd be different. Like, if they had sex the morning after the argument, then they would have been right on schedule. Like, okay, y'all had y'all deep talks, y'all have this understanding. Boom, now you all can rekindle the flame. Like, people use sex as a way to reconnect with their partner after arguments. And again, if there isn't a certain level of understanding and compromise that's come out of that, what did y'all really do? Y'all fought and then y'all had sex. So that's the Band-Aid. And the thank you scene at the end was she snapped. Best scene of the movie. And that's all I got. Okay, so hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope y'all got some of the things that I picked up from it. And again, with this recap, really taking to heart with what I said about certain elements, because I understand it was a lot for people to take in, but I do think that it was so relatable. And I think that's probably what they were going for. It's like, how can we show some of the realness, but also some of the dysfunction that exists in today's relationships? All right, y'all. Y'all have a good evening.